Hi everyone and welcome back to our classes on educational psychology. My name is Dr. Ruby and today's topic is Pavlov's classical conditioning, behaviorism theory of learning. In this video, we will explore the fascinating world of classical conditioning, a foundational concept in psychology that explains how we learn associations between stimuli. If you are new to this channel, we have previously covered educational philosophy, including both Western and Indian perspectives. We have also taken class on the basics of educational psychology, the meaning, nature, scope, and importance. And today, we are focusing on classical conditioning. So before we get into the details, let us outline what we'll cover in this video. First, we will define what classical conditioning is and why it's significant. Next, we'll explore the core concepts, including unconditioned stimulus, unconditioned response, conditioned stimulus, and conditioned response. After that, we'll take a look at Ivan Pavlov, who he was, his background, and his contribution to psychology. We will then discuss Pavlov's famous experiment and what he discovered. Finally, we will explore the educational implications of classical conditioning and how it can be applied in teaching and learning. Let us now understand what classical conditioning is. Classical conditioning is a type of learning where an organism learns to associate two stimuli, leading to a change in behavior. This concept, also known as respondent conditioning, focuses on automatic and involuntary responses rather than voluntary actions. Classical conditioning is basically about creating association between stimuli. For example, every time you hear a bell, you receive a delicious treat. You will start to associate the sound of the bell with getting a treat. Eventually, just the sound of the bell can make you feel excited even when no treat is presented. This learning involves automatic response. It is not about making conscious decisions, but about creating associations that lead to automatic reactions. For example, a dog salivates at the sound of a bell if it has learned to associate the bell with being fed. This concept laid the groundwork for understanding more complex theories of learning. It shows us how behaviors can be modified through associations and has influenced various psychological theories and practices. Classical conditioning explains how we learn to respond to certain stimuli based on past experiences. This understanding helps us in both psychological research and practical applications, such as education and therapy. Now, let us break down the core concepts of classical conditioning, starting with unconditioned stimulus. This is a stimulus that naturally and automatically triggers a response. For example, if you smell a delicious meal, you naturally feel hungry. The smell of the food is the unconditioned stimulus because it automatically triggers the feeling of hunger. Next is the unconditioned response. This is an unlearned, natural response to the unconditioned stimulus. In our example, the feeling of hunger you experience when you smell the food is the unconditioned response. It happens automatically without any learning involved. Next, conditioned stimulus. This is a previously neutral stimulus that after being paired with the unconditioned stimulus starts to trigger a similar response. For example, if a bell is rung every time you smell the food, the bell becomes a conditioned stimulus. Now, conditioned response. This is the learned response to the conditioned stimulus. After repeated pairing of the bell with the food, the sound of the bell alone will make you feel hungry. This learned response to the bell is the conditioned response. Having understood the concepts, now let us move on to Ivan Pavlov's background and his contributions. Ivan Pavlov was a Russian physiologist who initially focused his research on the digestive system, particularly studying salivation in dogs. In the 1890s, Pavlov observed that dogs would salivate not only when they taste food, but also when they saw the lab assistant who typically feed them. Pavlov's observation led him to shift his focus from digestion to psychology. By the late 1890s, he was exploring how stimuli and responses are related, which eventually led to the development of classical conditioning. In 1901, he pioneered the concept and presented his findings in 1903. His groundbreaking work earned him the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1904 for his contributions to our understanding of the digestive system. Pavlov's shift from studying digestion to exploring psychological phenomena highlights his profound impact on both physiological and psychological research. His work laid the foundation for understanding how behaviors and responses can be conditioned through associations. Now we will look at Pavlov's famous experiment and its results. Pavlov's famous experiment involved conditioning dogs to salivate at the sound of a bell. Here is how it unfolded. In his initial observation, Pavlov noticed that dogs would begin to salivate not just when they saw the food, but also when they saw the lab assistants who usually feed them. This observation motivated him and led him to investigate further. He then introduced a neutral stimulus, which is a bell, before presenting the food to the dogs. Initially, the bell had no effect on the dog's salivation. Over the time, Pavlov repeatedly paired the sound of the bell with the presentation of food. He carefully controlled the environment to ensure that dogs' responses were solely due to the association he created. After several pairing, the dogs began to salivate at the sound of the bell alone, even when no food was presented. This demonstrated that the neutral stimulus, which is the bell, has become a conditioned stimulus, eliciting a conditioned response, which is the salivation. Pavlov also discovered that similar stimuli could evoke the conditioned response. For example, if a different bell or a similar sound was made, the dog would still salivate, showing that they had generalized the conditioned response to similar stimuli. Let us now discuss the educational implications of classical conditioning. Teachers can use classical conditioning to promote positive behaviors. For example, if students receive praise or rewards for participating in class, they begin to associate classroom participation with positive outcomes, encouraging them to engage more effectively. By linking undesirable behaviors with negative consequences, such as loss of privileges or extra tasks, teachers can help reduce this behavior. For example, if students keep talking out of turn, they might lose a privilege like choosing a game during free time. This way, they learn that their behavior leads to missing out on something fun. Classical conditioning also enhances motivation. Associating enjoyable activities or rewards with learning tasks can increase students' motivation. For example, if students know that they will receive a small reward for completing their homework, they are more likely to complete it on time and with enthusiasm. Next, classical conditioning can help manage test anxiety by creating a calm and supportive test-taking environment. For example, if a teacher consistently uses relaxation techniques or calming music before tests, students may begin to associate the test environment with relaxation rather than anxiety. Next, teacher can use cues like a bell or a signal to condition students to be focused and attentive. For example, ringing a bell at the beginning of a lesson can signal students to pay attention, creating a routine that helps them transition smoothly into learning mode. Classical conditioning also helps us understand how students develop emotional responses. By recognizing these responses, teachers can create a positive emotional climate in the classroom. For example, if students have a positive association with classroom activities, they are more likely to participate enthusiastically. So that was all on classical conditioning. Understanding this provides valuable insights into how we learn associations and how this can be applied to improve teaching and learning experiences. In our next class, we will continue our journey into behaviorism by discussing B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning. We will delve into how reinforcement and punishment influences behavior and how these principles can be applied in educational settings. If you found this video helpful, please remember to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Stay tuned for more videos on educational psychology, and thank you for watching.